my overall goal in this speech today is to convince you all to vote. Voting is so important. So, can anybody tell me what happened? What happened in November? What happened in the United States on November 6th of last year?
We elected a president.
I'm assuming all of us are at least 18. And so, by the raise of hands, who all voted in last year's election? So that's a little bit more than half, which goes right along with the national average of the nation. CollegeStats.org states in 2004, 81% of 18 to 29-year-olds reported they showed up to vote come election day. 4 years later, the numbers dropped to 78%. By 2012, only 51% of voting age voters actually showed up to the polls, which is it's the lowest chunk of the voting group that shows up. So we as youth voters make up a humongous chunk of the voting population. VotingFacts.org reports that the millennial generation, so those born in the 90s to the 2000s, make up 1/5 of the voting population. And it's estimated that in 2015, that will increase to 1/3 of the voting population. And the church even has a stance on voting. They don't force you to or say that you have to, but they say the church does encourage its members to play a role as responsible citizens in the community, including being informed about issues and voting in elections. So this is why we must vote. So why exactly is voting so popular? Voting so important?
We all need a voice. If people have a voice, they should use it.
So I came up with 4 big ones that I thought played a big part in it. And it was, 1, it allows your opinion to be heard. 2, contributes so that you have a reason to be proud. 3, voting not only will affect you, but it will affect generations after you. And 4th, unlike some countries, we have the freedom to vote. So number 1, voting allows your opinion to be heard. We each have opinions and they should be able to be heard. And by voting, we are able to voice those opinions and for the things that we think are best for our country. Abraham Lincoln said this: "I am a firm believer in the people. If given the truth, they can be depended upon to meet any national crisis. A great point is to bring them the real facts." So as Abraham Lincoln says, if we get the information, we should be trusted to do the things that we want to do and have our own opinions and choices. And by voting, we are able to do that. Second, if you vote, you contribute, so you have a reason to be proud. And by contributing, you show that you are a proud citizen of this country, where you are able to choose a person or policy in which you are proud of and think is right. By not voting, you show that you are choosing to take action to make the choice you think is right. An unknown person once said, "In choosing not to vote, you cast no favor in either candidate's direction." And in that sense, I imagine that it is not permissible to complain about those in office. And this is kind of like a pet peeve of mine, kind of, is when people complain about politics and stuff that they haven't voted. Well, if they were to vote, then they would have that right to complain because they voice their opinion to choose this person. And so the third one, voting affects those who come after you. A choice you make or you choose not to make has a great impact that will affect your kids and maybe even their kids as well. And I think a big example of this would be not voting, or voting for a president who is for a war and you're against war, because wars can last for several years and affect those who come after you. 4th, we have the freedom to choose our leaders and lives, unlike some countries. There are only about 42 countries in the entire world that have the right to vote, and we are one of them. So sometimes people take this for granted. People like Martin Luther King, Susan B. Anthony, and those who fight overseas and sacrifice for this right that many people in the world do not have or get to experience. So now I ask you, what would the country be like if nobody, not one single person voted? And so I looked this up kind of, and it'd actually go to like someone in the electoral college would actually choose the person. And so we as citizens would have no say in who got chosen. So we would be questioning and be reluctant to follow the people who was chosen without the consent of us, the citizens of the United States. So in the end, I challenge all of us, all of you who haven't registered to register to vote, and those who are registered to actually go out and vote the next time. And also, when you vote, make sure that you have that informed opinion and that you know exactly what you're voting for. And because voting is not just a privilege, but a responsibility. In the end, I would like to end with this quote from Franklin D. Roosevelt. No one will ever deprive the American people of the right to vote, except the American people themselves. And the only way they can do that is by not voting.